What did you do with this money, with this $10,000 that you got for these Rolexes at the pawn shop?
I didn't receive $10,000.
What did you get?
We got $600.
Wow. And what did you do with the money?
My co-defendant took the money.
And what's she do with it?
She probably got high with it.
Sorry. Okay.
The value of the jewelry that I took, it was only 2 watches. I only took 2 watches.
It was 2 Rolex watches, which cost a pretty penny.
No, not those particular Rolex watches, ma'am.
We are about to watch a parole hearing for a man who received a 28-year sentence for home invasion in 1996. His full term date is in 2033, so he has 9 years riding on this parole hearing. At the end, I'll unpack the hearing with all of the information. With that, let's jump in.
This hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Ometrius Perez, inmate number 247322. who is serving a sentence of 28 years flat for robbery first, burglary, and larceny second. As of today, records reflect the parole eligibility date of May 28th, 2024 at 50%. There is victim input in this case. There is an OAP. It was reviewed and showed the offender completed emotional regulation, coping skills, anger management, individual therapy, relapse prevention, and My Future. He is on the waitlist for My Foundation, Jobs, Voices, and Anger Management. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls within the low range of risk for recidivism. Mr. Perez?
Yes.
This is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin.
1 second, please. Sir,
Ramos,
thank you. He said he completed anger management, and he said he is on the wait list for anger management.
Yeah.
But he was on the list twice.
Right.
It's the program.
Right, and he was on it twice. So even though he completed it,
I completed it. Oh,
Right, so you did twice?
yeah, right, so it was
That's
on,
what I'm saying.
yeah, it was completed and then they put it on his OAP again.
Yeah.
So I had to note it that way. Go ahead, sir, I'm sorry.
yes, ma'am. I did complete it twice. When I received the sentence modification, the counselor that created the new OAP didn't look at my screen. And when parole officer Acosta looked at my screen, she noticed that the facility counselor at Garner had failed to place the completion of the program on my computer screen. So it appeared as if I didn't complete the program. And that's why it was placed on the new OAP.
But he did it twice, because I have it listed twice.
Yes.
Twice too.
Okay, tell us why you deserve parole.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I don't view it as if I deserve parole, because I know parole is a privilege that is earned. I think if I am granted parole, I know I have a lot to contribute to society. I am a completely different person than the man that I was when I came to prison. When I first arrived at prison, I was an emotional wreck. I had a lot of baggage stemming from the childhood abuses that I suffered, and I never received treatment. And as a result of that, it made me a very angry and bitter young man. I was very rebellious. I didn't care about anything at that time. I didn't even care about my own life at that time. It wasn't until my incarceration, and I look at this experience as a blessing, because if it wasn't for this incarceration, I would never have gotten the mental health treatment that I needed to heal and to grow and to become the man that I am. I would have never have gotten the opportunity to give my life to the Lord. For the first time in my life, I have a spiritual foundation that I did not have when I was home. When I was free, I was just existing. I wasn't living. I was just going through life, carrying around my anger and the trauma that I suffered, and that prevented me from seeing that I had a bright future ahead of me. So everything that I've done since I've been incarcerated has been to build myself up to become a man who has something to contribute to society. I really believe that if I am granted parole, that I have a mission, I have a purpose. And my purpose is to prevent young men, and especially Black and Hispanic men who grew up in similar situations, from making the decisions that I made, from coming to prison. That is my mission. And if I can reach a young kid and put them on the right path to success, I believe I've accomplished that goal. So when you've asked me, why do I think I deserve parole? That's a difficult question for me to answer, because I deserved what I got. I committed a crime, and I deserve to have been punished for that crime. On the same note, over the past 30 years, I've taken every class that I could to address my mental health issues. I've gotten the mental health treatment for the post-traumatic stress disorder that I have. I've got 2 graduate degrees. I completed my second master's 2 years ago. I'm currently working on my doctorate degree in theology. I've created programs that I believe once I have completed my sentence, or if I'm released, I believe that I will be able to implement those programs and have great success doing so.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Perez, for your opening statement. I just want to clarify something that you said. You said over the past 30 years.
Yes.
Is that, how long have you been in a Connecticut incarceration?
And I had 2 consecutive sentences.
I understand, one in New York and one in Connecticut.
Yes. So
how long have you been incarcerated in Connecticut?
14 years.
Okay. Okay.
Right. But my
I wanted
journey
you to come up with that number.
Yes, ma'am. My journey towards rehabilitation began when I was serving my New York sentence. I had decided then that I needed to make a change in my life.
Okay. So each of us are going to take turns asking you questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Then once we're done, we deliberate on the record. You can listen, not make any comment. But before we get there, we have victim input. Okay. So, Mr. Rodriguez, it's your choice. Do you want to do victim
I'd like to hear the
input
victim.
now?
I would like to hear the victim.
Okay. Are you all set with that?
I would prefer us to ask our questions and then.
Okay, I'm good with that too.
Okay.
I'm easily changing that.
Okay.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Perez.
Good morning.
So look, you've answered some of my questions in your opening statements. You've earned your educational stuff. You've done a lot of work around your educational stuff.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I appreciate that very, very much. I just want to talk a little bit about the offense, because it was a very serious, heinous offense.
Yes.
And in your opening statement, I didn't hear anything that addressed the trauma around the victim in this case, which kind of took me back a little bit, because I was expecting you to kind of share a little bit more about that. Just share me a little bit about what happened. How did all this happen?
Yes. I deliberately didn't bring it up because I knew that it was going to be a focus, and I wanted to address that specifically without trying to downplay it, the severity of it. It was a stupid decision that I made. I over the years, as I thought about it, you know, what I have done, I tear up every time I sip and every time I reminisce what I have done. I broke into Mr. Levine's home. I pointed a gun at him and I robbed him at gunpoint. I violated the sanctity and security of his home, his peace of mind, which is something that, and the reason why it impacts me the way it does is because my trauma was similar. So I can relate to what he experienced. I can relate to the trauma that I caused him. And every time when I think about it, it really causes me to tear up because I never ever want to subject somebody to that kind of experience and treatment, because I personally know how that feels. At that time, I was in a very dark place. I allowed myself, my co-defendant, to convince me to do it. I had a choice to say no, but I chose to do it anyway. And I regret that decision to my core. I cannot, when the very first time I had an opportunity to address Mr. Levine was back in June of last year at a sentence modification hearing. And I broke down and I cried as I apologized to him. I never wanted to, for the life of me, I don't know what I was thinking, why I did that.
Well, you mentioned that you were in a dark place. What
was
that?
yes.
What was that dark place you were in? Explain that to me.
All right. As a child, I was placed into group homes and foster homes. I was sexually assaulted. I was sodomized.
I don't need a whole lot of I don't need all that kind of personal.
I know, but
kind of stuff,
as a result,
in that moment, I know you've had. I read your
Yes,
information. So I know you
I
had a very
struggled.
difficult childhood growing up.
Yeah,
But
I struggled.
you said at that time you were in a dark place.
Yes.
Were you on drugs? Were you doing drugs?
No, sir. I don't use drugs. I detest drugs. Drugs is what ruined my family life. Drugs is why I have the vision issues that I have. My mother was a heroin addict. She left methadone out in the open, and I got hold of it as a kid, and it destroyed my optic nerves. So I detest drugs.
Okay, so you were in a dark place because you were really an angry person.
I was spiraling out of control because of the trauma, my unresolved trauma. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't understand. I never knew I had the mental health illness. I never knew I was suffering from PTSD. I just thought that, you know what, I had anger issues. And I was just
Well,
existing.
it was obvious you had anger issues.
Yes, sir.
So the offense was obviously a very concern to me, right?
Yes, sir.
The nature of that offense,
Yes.
violating somebody's home, putting
Yes,
a gun
sir.
to somebody's head, that was still very concerning to me, just so
Yes,
you know
sir.
that.
Yes.
The other thing that concerns me, you've had an opportunity to do some programming and kind of get some stuff done, but when I look at your ticket record, you just got a ticket for assault.
Right.
Less than 6 months ago.
Okay, it wasn't. Yes, I did. I caught that ticket. What happened was there was this inmate, he kept provoking me. You see my sight cane? He kept kicking it deliberately. He'll walk by me and he'll kick it. Over a 4-month period, he just kept escalating. And when the last time he kicked the cane, he broke it. And I just swung on him. I lost it. It was over a 4-month period, and all the officer saw was me swing and hit him. The officer didn't see what precipitated that, what set that event in motion. So I received the ticket. After they reviewed the videotape, they gave me a 3-day sanction, from which I only spent 2 days in special housing unit, and I was taken out. If you look at
so my concern is that you don't have a rationale for doing it. My concern is that you didn't seem to utilize whatever skills you had learned in in the courses that you've taken, the anger management that you've
Right.
taken, which you've now determined that you've taken it more than once, you know,
Right.
you didn't utilize those kinds of skills that, you know, you've talked about,
Yes,
you know, the changes that you've made and
Yes, sir.
and the growth that you've had, and in
Yes.
an instant of something happening,
I
your
have.
reaction was to lash out, you know, still with some anger, I mean, right?
No, actually, it wasn't, I didn't lash out of anger. I had no control. I have no control over the fight or flight response of my mental illness. I have, when it happened, if you was to speak to the mental health staff here, I was hurt by that. That I didn't have control over that, and it bothered
I've
me.
read some of the reports from your treatment.
Yeah,
You're currently on medication?
I am not on medication.
Okay.
The reason why I'm
Yeah,
not on
I don't need a reason. That's fine. That answer's fine. Thank you.
okay,
I don't need a reason at this point.
I think, Mr. Rodriguez, I think you need to explain to him why you keep cutting him off, because it just sounds like you're not allowing him to speak. And the reason that we don't want to get all into your.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I don't want to get too deeply into any of the mental health stuff is that we're on video and the world is watching. Basically, we don't know who's watching, so we don't want to have all that personal kind of information shared on your end, and that's kind of why I'll cut you off at certain times. It's not because I don't want to hear you. I just don't want you to then start getting into something else. All right.
yes, sir.
Okay. Then that's what it is.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's good. So share with me just a little bit about, if you were to be released, what are your plans to be successful in this release?
Okay, I have a two-pronged plan. My immediate goal is to obtain safe housing where I'm secure, where I don't have the threat of abuse. That is my first concern. Afterwards, I have every intentions on staying in touch with a mental health clinician, so that if I start having difficulties controlling my disability, that I can immediately get the treatment that I need. In case I need to go back on medication, I know that that is something that will be available to me if I need it. The other plan that I have, I created a program. It is my intentions to implement that program and to have that program up and running. I have a plan to facilitate with a lot of the churches in these communities in New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford, all of the communities that have a high crime rate or have a gun violent rate. I want to be able to work in those communities so that I can have an impact. I really believe that I think I can have an impact. Because if we can keep these young kids from picking up guns or getting involved with gangs and focusing on a trade or pursuing their dreams, I believe that we can lower the crime rate.
I saw you had a program, a version program, right?
Yes.
Madam Chair, at this point, I don't have any additional questions. I want to reserve my colleague has to say it. Can I follow up on that?
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Perez, I just want to follow up with the discussion that you had with my colleague. You were talking about the victim piece, and you seem to get very emotional about that. And you said that you get emotional about it because you see yourself as a victim.
No, I don't see myself.
No, not as a victim. What you were saying is that you see yourself. You've had some traumatic experiences in your own life, and not that you're at a disadvantage, because you're not in the same level, I guess, as the victim of your offense, but in the fact that you're you're a victim of society in your life, in your life's experiences.
I'm not a victim of society. I'm a victim of individuals who preyed on me when I was a child.
All right, that's still
However,
society.
Right. When I make the, I can relate. I can relate to the trauma that I caused him,
I
and
thought
in
that's what
terms
I
of
said.
in terms of how he feel about being violated by someone.
Right.
So
I asked that, and I apologize for stopping you. I did mean that. Maybe I didn't articulate what you were as well as you did, but I do understand where you were coming from. And I asked that question because this wasn't your first robbery. Although, I mean, it is in Connecticut, but you committed a total of how many throughout your criminal history? How many robberies?
I have two convictions in New York for robbery.
Yep. Okay. And you also have carrying a dangerous weapon in New York as well.
Yes.
And so the robbery with a firearm, and that one was in 89, and then you had two in 94.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So that's three. And then this one is 4. No?
No. Okay. I see how you view it. The reason in New York, the two, it was one act that they charged me multiple times for.
Okay.
So when I said I had two convictions, I was referring to the one in 89 and then the one in 94.
So there were two separate places two separate victims for the robbery ones?
And in 94. In 94, It was one act, two victims.
Okay, and that's
why when you asked me the convictions, it was I had two convictions.
I didn't use the word conviction, though. I said in your criminal activity, in your criminal history.
I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I thought
It's okay. So I know we were focused on this case because this is why you're currently incarcerated here with us. But what about those other victims? What do you think the impact of your actions had on them?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't come to the realization. I didn't weigh that until this experience, this incarceration.
Okay.
Because it was during this incarceration that I got mental health treatment. I participated in a lot of mental health groups. I was on medication. I did a lot of psychotherapy.
I'm going to stop you again because we're doing that for your own protection. And I understand that you want us to understand, but we don't want you to divulge information that could potentially harm you in the long run.
Okay. Before this incarceration, I didn't have a spiritual foundation. I was just existing. I was very angry. I was rebellious, and I was projecting that anger on the world.
I get it. So, Mr. Perez, I'm a kind of hit it and quit it kind of girl. And I know you want to explain, but when I ask you a question, it's because I have another question after that, based on so short and sweet is fine by me. So, you said the prior robberies you were just existing, so you were also in that dark space. So from 89 up until 96, 94, when you came here, that was your I'm angry at the world kind of period, right?
No, ma'am. It actually started before that.
Okay.
I started being rebellious around 86, 80, somewhere around 85, 86.
Okay. And I commend you on your educational endeavors, and I know that the more that we learn, what's the saying? When you know better, you do better. So, having that spiritual foundation will help us make better choices.
Yes, ma'am.
So I asked you about the victims in your robberies prior to this one, because in this case, do you know in Connecticut, our entire criminal history, our entire criminal procedures changed because of this offense, this kind of offense, where they deemed them home invasions now, where a person entering into a house with a person inside the house and robbing them at gunpoint is considered a very, a very serious offense, like, and a dangerous.
Yes. I believe it was after the Cheshire incident.
Yeah, that's a curse word to us.
Yes, I'm sorry. I believe
It is.
that,
Yeah, but that's,
I,
it was
even
after
though
that.
even though my offense transpired in '94,
Yeah.
my heart goes out to the Pettit family.
No. I was just saying, we're not gonna talk about that. But I was saying that this type of offense
Yes,
mirrors that kind of
it
thing.
is
And
an
our
egregious
whole
offense.
judicial system
Yes,
changed because of this offense.
Yes.
So it's you're sitting here today because you weren't held under that law. Like you got this 35-year sentence that was reduced to 28, and you're eligible for parole because you only have to serve 50%. But had it happened later, you would have been there a lot longer.
yes.
And I did make another note of a question. What did you do with this money, with this $10,000 that you got for these Rolexes at the pawn shop?
I didn't receive $10,000.
What did you get?
We got $600.
Wow. And what did you do with the money?
My co-defendant took the money.
And what's to do with it?
She probably got high with it.
Sorry. Okay.
The value of the jewelry that I took, it was only 2 watches. I only took 2 watches.
It was 2 Rolex watches, which cost a pretty penny.
No, not those particular Rolex watches, ma'am.
Say Rolex, that automatically, in my opinion, says
they were not the high-end Rolex watches. They were not the higher scale of Rolex watches. Nevertheless, we only got $600 for that, but it wasn't about the money. I think the reason why I was brought out here to commit that crime was because she wanted to get back at her father.
And I heard in your interview with the officer how you referred to your co-defendant, and you said that you're very spiritual, right? But you called her some choice words, and I just
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Called her some choice words. Your
No,
co-defendant.
before that, I didn't hear what you said before that.
I said that you are a man of, I didn't say this, but I said that you're a man of thought, right? You studied spirituality and religion, and you called her some pretty nasty things.
Now I am. Back then I wasn't.
No, but when you spoke with the officer, you called her names, no?
What officer?
Didn't you do this interview, officer, for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I don't remember what you talking about.
It says that you called your co-defendant a dumb bee and a twisted bee. You didn't tell her that?
When did I tell her that? At what time?
Whenever she met with you in preparation for today's hearing. You don't remember meeting with her?
I remember meeting with someone. What did I say about her?
You called her a dumb bitch and a twisted bitch.
Yeah. I said that?
That's what she noted. Yeah.
If you was to speak to anyone that know me, I don't use those words. If I said at the time she was a dumb bee and a twisted bee, I'm sure I might have said that, but I don't believe I said the entire word.
What difference does it make? A bee still means we know what a bee is.
At the
Talking about a bumblebee?
No, ma'am. At the time, when I tell you, she was not a good person at that time. But if If he was to speak to anyone, whether it's the mental health staff or the regular staff, I don't use that language now. That is
Sure.
not who I am.
An abbreviation still is the word. So,
I
get it. I understand, but you said that she wasn't a good person back then, neither were you. I'm sure she's changed.
Right, but I'm not sure that that was recorded accurately. I don't believe I used that terminology. And I'm not.
Mr. Perez, I'm gonna interrupt. You were interviewed by a parole officer from the Board of Pardons and Parole. They do
Yes.
not make stories up. It was in quotes. Those were the words that you said. If you do not remember saying it, then I can appreciate you saying, I don't remember saying it that way, but saying that she came up with something other than what you said is not appropriate.
That is not what I'm implying, ma'am. That's not what I'm implying. I'm not inferring that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I don't recall saying the entire phrase. If I said it, I might have said twisted B or what have, but I don't recall saying that entire phrase because I don't use that language.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Sister. Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Perez, you said you did not, when my colleague, Mr. Rodriguez, asked if you did not express any remorse for the victim, and you stated it was a stupid mistake not to. And then you further elaborated by saying that you can relate to the trauma of the victim because you were a victim. So I don't understand any of that. He asked a very simple question. How come you did not express any remorse for the victim?
Yeah. When he asked me if I had an opening statement, I primarily focused on the growth that I have made. And then when he pointed out the fact that he found it interesting that I didn't mention it, I said I deliberately didn't initially mention it because I knew that you guys had questions for me regarding my behavior on the night in question. I was under the impression, and yes, I do feel remorse for the offense that I committed. Words can't even express how sorry I am for what I've done. And over the past 30 years, because of my remorse, is why I decided to take the steps that I took to rehabilitate myself, to become a better person.
Right. But
I am extremely remorseful for my behavior. Words cannot express how many times I've cried when I thought about this offense, or even when I gave my testimony at the church here, how I cried because of the pain that I caused someone else.
Okay, so let me stop you right then and there, because your opening statement included, how far you have come. Part of that should have been your remorse for the victim. That's all we're saying. And you don't need to say anything more. I'm just pointing that out to you, when it was said, because that's very important for the panel.
Absolutely. Everything
Now,
that
I do know that, so your original sentence was 35 years flat. You received a sentence, well, before that, you applied for a commutation, which was denied because you didn't meet the criteria. But you were given a sentence modification last June 2023. And so, it took off 8 years, and that's why you're here today, right? 14 years of your incarceration has been spent in Connecticut. for the robbery. And I understand at your sentence modification, part of the reason for getting it was because you not only expressed remorse and shame for the offense, but the fact that you were able to address the victim
Yes.
who was in court. And I think the judge was pretty much moved by that.
Yes.
Okay. What I hear continuously is that first you're blaming your offense, the Connecticut, on your co-defendant, as if she made you do it.
No,
And
ma'am.
Secondly,
No, ma'am.
well, let me finish. And your charges in New York, you said it was because of the trauma that you were going through of the lifestyle
I
in
don't-
regards to your mother being an addict and then you were moving into care that abused you, and so that resulted in
I
trauma.
don't think you're summarizing my statement correctly, ma'am. My behavior, my criminal behavior was a byproduct of the trauma that I suffered. My mental
What
health
did I
illness.
say?
So when I didn't blame my actions on my co-defendant, I said I allowed myself to be manipulated by my co-defendant to come out here to commit that crime against her father. That was a choice I made. I made that choice to do it. I wasn't blaming anyone but myself for that.
You know what, Mr. Perez? I'm through because I know what I heard. And I heard your reference to your co-defendant. Okay.
Yes, I said I
based on
allowed
what
my
you
co-defendant.
Or how you said it led me to believe that, it was really on her. She kind of made you do it.
No, I made the choice. Ultimate, ma'am.
Okay.
I am solely responsible for my behavior. Whether I allow somebody to convince me to do or talk me into doing something, that's irrelevant. I made the choice. I did that.
Glad to hear you say that.
Yes,
And
I did
appreciate
that.
it.
And that's on me. I don't blame anyone for anything that I've done because I made those stupid mistakes. And it is because of those mistakes that I am in prison today. It is
Okay.
because of those mistakes that I have grown into the man that I am today. Because I don't ever want to repeat those mistakes. I don't ever want to give someone control over my mindset and my choices ever again. No one.
Okay.
I will not
One
surround
last-
myself with
okay.
people.
I just need you to tone
Okay,
it down a
Mr.
little.
Perez.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me. I just need you to tone it down a little. There's another hearing on the other side.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Perez, can you share with me, you have an Associate of Theology, a Bachelor, and a Master's, and you're currently working on your doctorate. Can you share with me where you obtained this degree and where you're currently working on your doctorate now?
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you say that again, please? For some reason or another, I'm having a difficult time hearing you.
Okay. So the associate, bachelor's, and master's degree that you currently hold, can you share with me where you obtained them? And then the second part is you indicated that you're currently working on your Doctor of Theology and where that is.
Yes. I have my master's degree in ministry from Carolina University of Theology. And I received that degree in 2003.
Yeah,
I
I
have
know the
my
dates. I
I
have
have-
the dates. I just want to know the place.
okay. I have my associates, my bachelor's, and my master's in theology from Calvary Christian College and Seminary. I've submitted with I've given the parole officer, Ms. Acosta, copies of my degrees and my transcript from both seminaries.
Okay, and your current doctorate?
Yes, from Calvary Christian College and Seminary.
Okay, so it's the same place.
Yes, that I have my associate's, bachelor's, master's in theology from. My first master's in ministry I got from
You
Carolina
said that
University.
one. The last one, the Doctor of Theology, is it at the same Calvary Christian
College and Seminary, yes,
seminary?
yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Okay, so I don't have any further questions, so I'm now going to ask the Office of Victim Services.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, before we go to the victim advocate, I just wanted to just stay on the record and apologize to Mr. Perez because the information that we read in the decision information summary was a quote from his pre-sentencing investigation, not from his interview with the officer. So Mr. Perez, I stand corrected. I do apologize. That was a quote from your PSI. So you did not, that was not a direct quote from the officer. I misread. Thank you.
Because if you speak to anyone, I don't use that language anymore. I don't
understand.
speak.
Okay, so
We stand corrected.
yeah, so we have corrected that. That statement was taken from your PSI,
Yes.
okay? So now, if Mrs. De Jesus is ready for us.
Yes, good morning, board members. I do have a statement and it reads as follows. I'm having this statement read at this hearing by our victim's advocate, Ms. Melissa De Jesus. As each time these hearings occur, I feel re-victimized and re-traumatized by Mr. Perez. I wish to not have to think about and relive the events of April 15th, 1994 ever again. I will never forget being awakened in my bed and having the barrel of a Tech 9 assault weapon to my head and Mr. Perez's repeated threats to kill me while he robbed me of all of mine and my wife's jewelry. A large and very strong part of me believes that when you, quote, do the crime, you must serve the time, end quote. His sentence for this act has already been reduced by 7 years. Mr. Perez made many choices over the years and chose which society he wanted to be a part of through his extensive criminal activities, not just this one. Now his basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter are taken care of, and it's difficult to imagine how he, and more importantly, society itself, would be better off with him on the outside. We certainly do not feel safe. I assume that the parole board has read the statements my wife and I read at the sentence modification hearing, his record, and the transcript of the trial itself. You have extensive experience and knowledge of these cases. We trust that you will make a decision taking our and other people's safety and the needs of society in general into an informed decision. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we're going to have a discussion on the record. Mr. Perez, you can listen, but you cannot say anything. Okay?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
at the end of our discussion, I will announce to you what our decision is. Okay?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, on the one hand, Mr. Perez has done extremely well around his educational endeavors, created a program, done these very positive things about his personal thing, advancing himself, utilizing some of the services that he utilized while incarcerated. I am still challenged by the nature of this offense, the victim statement, which I really appreciate hearing, and feel for the victims in this particular case. I can't imagine waking up in the middle of the night with someone in my bedroom pointing a gun at me or pointing a gun at my head and threatening to kill me. So the nature of the offense for me is it's a very concerning problem. The other thing is he's taken a variety of different kinds of programming, coping skills, anger management a couple of times, emotional regulation. He's had some individual therapy. He's done some other work, although he's on the wait list. And yet, July, he wasn't able to really kind of utilize the skills that he had learned from that, having been caught up in something. I think maybe in some other ways he could have handled that. Clearly, there's still some more work I think that he still has to do. He's come a long way, I think, in his thinking and in his self-reflection of who he is and what's driven some of this very, very intense anger between the victim statements and the nature of this offense. I'm really not inclined to grant discretionary parole today.
Okay. Thank
Mr.
you.
Perez. And that's not meaning the work that he has done, his education and moving to a more spiritual place.
Thank you, Mrs. Page.
Madam Chair, in light of his disciplinary infraction for assault, which honestly it was committed out in the community, would have resulted in a conviction, so that would be an constitutional adjustment. And the impact statement to the victim, I would vote to deny his request for discretionary parole as well.
Okay. So, you know, the disciplinary reports was concerning to me because as I was going down the dates of Mr. Perez's participation in the degrees between 2017 and 2021, he received all the DRs, you know, threats, fighting, interfering, you know, a bunch of other things. And then less than 6 months ago, he has this assault and, you know, his explanation that he could not control the environment after taking anger management twice was concerning to me. So, you know, having said that, I am not in favor of early release today.
I had
The question that I have is, do we want to give him a rehear date?
Well, Madam Chair, I really don't think, what else is there to do? He's taken a.
taken a lot of program committees. He's pretty much on track to what he wants to do. He kind of figures.
But do we want to give him some more time? I mean, look at his discharge date.
I know, I understand that, but again, what is it for him to do in the facility, aside from?
I think he needs to do some other positive programs and,
Well, he
you know,
has some on the wait list.
voices. I think he should do voices.
His voice is on his own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to a rehear, I just, you know, I
mean, I wouldn't be opposed to a reader either, but that's not sure.
just look at it from the victim's perspective, to be honest, and, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. You know, it's my understanding that Mr. Perez has already asked, he tried to do the commutation. He went in for the sentence mod, and now he is up for this discretionary parole. That's, you know, 3 requests for relief, and the victim, you know, being notified for all of these
They're
things.
still traumatized.
It's just, and then to try to put them back through that again.
Which they mentioned in their statement.
I don't, you know,
Well, it's their request that they feel that when you receive that sentence modification, that they feel that that was enough.
right, but for
So-
someone that has been down, as he said, several times for 30 years, you know, he's going to need help to transition back into the community. There's no doubt, he's serving a flat sentence. So,
And he's not halfway house eligible until 2031. So that's, I hear the point of the victim's input. I really would like to see Mr. Perez do some more work on himself.
Bring it back.
I would do 2 to 5 years, I don't know.
wow. I'm going to let the two of you determine that.
Because you don't want to do a rehear.
No, it's not that. I'm just, you know, 2 to 5 years.
Well, it was just, a suggestion.
That's what I'm saying.
In terms of what the victim is saying.
Right.
I'm thinking from the perspective of the victim and the fact that I'm sure there are 1 or 2 other programs that he could do. That would be a benefited in the voices of one.
I would not be opposed to a rehear.
When?
2 to 5 years.
When do you want to read it?
I just put that out there. I'm not saying
No,
that.
I get it, but I'm asking for, I understand that piece, but I'm asking for what Mr. Rodriguez feels
Yeah.
in terms of timing.
Well, I think I probably would want to go the full 5 years. If we're gonna go with a rehear. I mean, he has made some educational progress, he's made some other progress in the program. There is that one ticket that he got that throws me off, and there is the nature of this offense. And in some ways, I feel like Pamela Page bringing the victims back back in for another. But I can see going either way.
In 29. There's no doubt that he's definitely going to need some supervision.
No doubt about it.
I really do 2 years. I would personally do 5 years. Trying to think this through.
So,
5 years would be 2029, yeah.
yeah, so that would be kind of close. Why don't we do 3 years?
3 years, that's.
And then that would be 2027, and you would have some time.
I'm fine with the denying of the year.
Then we're gonna vote on.
I could do the 3 years, and again, it's not, it's really not, so things from my perspective is Mr. Perez already has received a sentence modification, which took 7 years off of his sentence. He wouldn't have even been eligible for parole for a number of years from now. So in my opinion, giving him a denial here in 3 years would probably be along the same lines as his, his eligibility fee. So with that, and this is not in punishment, but it is, from a victim's perspective and, in light of his recent behaviors and his saying, when someone does something to me, I have it's difficult for me to kind of step back and suppress those punches in the faces kind of thing. Because that's what happened.
Yeah.
So, I would support the 3 years. That would give himself some more time to work on himself and come back without any disciplinary infractions or whatever probably programs he could have.
January 2027.
We just put 2027. Yeah, no, but then so we would do January 1.
2027.
Yeah. I thought you meant that. Okay, so in the case of Ometrius Perez, inmate number 247322, there is a motion to deny request for discretionary parole for these reasons: nature and circumstances of the current offense, injury and impact to victim and victim's family, and poor institutional adjustment. We would also like to grant a new rehear date of January 2027 with the recommendation to complete positive programs to include what's left on his OAP and additional positive programs and no disciplinary reports. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, motion granted. Mr. Perez, we were
Yes.
not able to grant you today, but we did give you a rehear date of January 2027.
Thank you.
Okay, so we wish you the best of luck.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Once again, I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you guys today. And, you know, if I have to appear before you in 3 years, I'm going to do everything that I can to fulfill the obligations on my OAP and continue to grow and continue to demonstrate that I am ready to return back to society a productive member. So I
Okay.
thank you.
This concludes the hearing for Ometrius Perez, inmate number 247322. Thank you, Mr. Perez.
Hey, thank you, ma'am. Have a good day.
You as well.
Okay, I thought that was just a wild hearing. I was taken through a loop and just, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the hearing. Is he a pathological liar? Or, you know, because it was just such a bizarre hearing for me. And we're going to go over the records of his case, and we'll also go over what they spoke about as the really the terrifying case of the Cheshire home invasion, which changed how Connecticut sentences home invasions in the future. And I looked it up, and yeah, it's got its own Wikipedia page, and it is nightmarish. But first, let me just like speak out loud about my experiences with this hearing. I mean, one thing that just stuck out to me was it was never brought up that he's blind. It didn't bring up how long he's been blind. And I mean, like, how is that not something that's brought up? How is that not something that's taken into account? I mean, yes, I think it was a really bad hearing, and I mean, it was really bad, but in terms of how he performed, but at the same time, the man's blind, and he's been locked up for a long time, 28 years. And I've been watching these Connecticut hearings, and I'm seeing people who have taken lives getting paroled after 16, 17 years. So, you know, like, I get he had a bad hearing, but then they're like, well, he has a write-up for you know, an assault in prison. But again, he's blind. So on one aspect, I'm just saying, like, how is he a threat to society? Like, is he really a threat to society? On the other hand, it just like, it seemed that he just lied through the hearing, took no accountability, and just, you know, has this inability to tell the truth. He, you know, they start. I'm disappointed that they say to him, "I'm disappointed that you didn't mention the victim." And his answer is, "I deliberately didn't mention the victim because and he had some rambling answer to that. And then I think he said he's working on his doctorate, but that he had gotten his associates, his bachelor's, and his master's in 2003. And I just have a very hard time believing that. Remember, he got arrested in 1996. So, I mean, that would assume that, but from the time of arrest to 2003 is 7 years, that he would have gotten all those degrees. And this is before the internet, basically. I mean, I know the internet existed, but it wasn't. I mean, and from prison, like I just don't. Yeah, I have a hard time believing that that's true. And if it was true, he should have gotten a lot of credit for it. And if it was true that he's working on his doctorate, he should get a lot of credit for it. But I don't think. My guess is that they just said it's not true, and that they're not giving him any credence for that. Then you have him talk about the 2 Rolexes that he stole, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I got $500-600 for it." And hey, you know, maybe he did get 5. These are pawn shops. Maybe they ripped him off, but I mean, it's still hard to believe. And he's like, "Oh, and I never touched the money. It was my girlfriend who got all the money. I never even got any of the money from it." And they were cheap Rolexes. I got, you know, it's like everything was, which is fascinating in a way to see. Remember, this is almost 30 years later. And really, he had one job at this parole hearing, and it was to express remorse, to be humble, and take accountability. And that's really it. I think he would have maybe had a different result, but it wasn't there. And the one thing that was interesting, and I guess give the board a lot of credit, they accused him of cursing, and then they apologized and said it was a PSR report, and the PSR report would have been for the pre-sentencing like 30 years ago. So, he said it pretty adamantly, "I don't curse, it's not me," and I believe him now, going through that process. So there are certain things that, you know, I think you do need to give him some, you know, and that must have been a frustrating moment to be called a liar at that point, for sure. But I give the board credit for at least bringing that up. Now they're saying they're giving him a rehearing in 3 years, and he can't get any write-ups. So I hope he doesn't. But man, they need some type of parole project in Connecticut, right? I mean, this guy's going to need a lot of help when he gets out. So here's the court transcript where it goes into a little bit of details. And on that note, to hear from the victim how traumatized the victim still is. It's we'll get into a little bit of that, how that happened. So, and thank you, Richard, for providing all this information. So the following facts of procedural history relevant to resolution of the arrest was issued. It's about its appeal. So on May 21st, 1996, Detectives Brian and David Wagner of Connecticut State Police transported the defendant from Green Haven Correctional Facility in Stormville, New York, to Troop A Police Barracks. What are they talking about? Oh, okay. Prior to transporting the defendant, Wagner handcuffed the defendant and read him his Miranda rights. During the transportation, Wagner and the defendant engaged in a conversation. During that conversation, the defendant told Wagner that he was involved in the robbery at the victim's house. Upon arriving at Troop A, Wagner asked the defendant if he could provide a written statement about the crimes underlining this appeal. The defendant declined until he had opportunity to speak with the prosecutor. The defendant filed a motion to suppress the statement that he had made while being transported to Connecticut. A hearing was held before the court on October 24, 1986. The only two witnesses to testify at the hearing were Mayor Vigilia and Wagner. After hearing the argument from the defendant and the state, the court reserved decision on the defendant's suppression motion and asked each party to submit simultaneous briefs on what the effect in the defendant's representation by counsel. Okay, sorry. So this is just whether or not. Let's go into the facts of the case. Okay, so here's the facts. Sorry about that. At approximately 2 a.m. on April 16, 1994, the victim, Paul Levine, was awakened from sleep when somebody turned on the ceiling lights in his bedroom. Upon awakening, Levine saw the defendant holding a gun in the doorway of the bedroom. The defendant ordered Levine at gunpoint to keep his head down or he would kill him. The defendant then took cash and jewelry from Levine valued between $10,800 and $10,900. So I think these were the two Rolexes. I guess the Rolexes were a little bit cheaper back in the 90s, huh? Levine was then ordered. It was funny what he said. No, they were cheap Rolexes. Levine was then ordered to go into his bathroom and not leave. Shortly after entering the bathroom, Levine heard the front screen door close and Levine called 911. The defendant subsequently was arrested in New York on May 21st, 1996. So why it took so he was arrested 2 years later. I get it. He was arrested 2 years later because I guess he, for some reason, confessed to that crime in the police car. So he would have never gotten caught. He would have never spent all this time in jail, in prison, unless he ratted himself out. I think that's what happened. And I mean, you can kind of see it. The guy does talk a lot. The defendant initially claims that the court improperly denies motion to suppress the statements he made while being transported. The following facts in the procedural history relevant to resolution. The arrest warrant was issued in the defendant on April 21st, 1994 for the crimes underlying this appeal. Subsequently, the defendant was arrested and incarcerated in New York for crimes occurring in the state. On October 16, 1995, the state of Connecticut. I'm still quite confused about this because, I mean, did he just confess entirely? Like, how did they actually, just from that statement, they were able to know for sure that he did this crime? I'm a little confused. I wish I could unpack this in more detail. But I don't quite understand it. Maybe it's right here. At trial, the defendant testified that he was not involved in the robbery and that his fingerprints, which were found at the scene, were from an earlier attempt to throw stink bombs into. Okay, well, there you go. He had his fingerprints there. Look at. Okay, so now we know how they found him guilty. But listen to this excuse. He testified at trial. This is funny. Oh God, which were found. He said it was an earlier attempt to throw stink bombs into the house. The defendant also admitted that he gave a false alibi to the police the day of the robbery. During the closing argument, the prosecutor stated, "Now look at what the defendant testified and how he testified. Was any of his testimony credible? He has 4 felony convictions on his record. He's sitting up here and he has watched everything that has been testified to already. He knows that he's trapped into. He has seen how credible the state's witnesses are, so he has to come up with something that kind of puts it all together." The court then interrupted the prosecutor's argument. The prosecutor continued, "How does he testify? He admits that he made up an alibi, but then qualifies and says, well, the alibi applies to me and my friend, but not to the defendant's girlfriend. He just put her into it to get her out of trouble. He helps hide the gun for his girlfriend to get her out of trouble. Then he states that he has had a chance to start asking him questions, thinks about how he responded to the state's questions, how definitive were the answers and questions, and the state is asking you, how much sense did it all make?" So it kind of jumps around these hearings. It doesn't go like straight through all the details, but I'll put the link in the description if you want to review it yourself. There's quite a lot in it. There's actually more in there in his appeal than I've seen from maybe any other hearing. He kind of like appealed on every opportunity that he could. I don't know how he talked his attorney into doing that, but could you imagine him taking the stand and claiming it was stink bombs? So let's go over that terrible case that they spoke about here. This is terrible. This is just terrible, and it's interesting to see how different states, right, have different legislation for different crimes, and because of this act that happened in 2007. Everyone was outraged, and legislation was passed that now gives, I believe, life sentences or stricter sentences for home invasions. And it's just interesting how that works, in my opinion. But this crime was just absolutely. On July 23rd, 2007, Linda Hayes named as Stephen Hayes and presenting. Okay, and Joshua invaded the residence of the Petit family in Cheshire, Connecticut. Though initially planning only to rob the house, Hayes and Komisarjevsky took the lives of Jennifer Hawk Petit and her two daughters, 17-year-old Haley and 11-year-old Michaela. The father, Dr. Williams, escaped with severe injuries. I'd rather be dead. Upon entering the Petit's home, the intruders beat William with a baseball bat, and the pair restrained him in the basement. Then Hawk Petit and her daughter were also restrained. Hayes later kidnapped Hawk Petit and forced her to withdraw money at a bank. After returning to the home, Hayes sexually assaulted her and then strangled her to death. And then they sexually assaulted the 11-year-old. Then the invaders decided to burn down the house to destroy the evidence, with Haley and Michaela tied to their beds. The invader doused them and the house with gasoline and set it on fire, leaving them to die. The case garnered significant attention in Connecticut and Hartford, citing it possibly the most widely publicized crime in the state's history. The homicides received national and international attention, and it had significant impact on Connecticut's death penalty, ultimately delaying its abolition. Thank goodness. But now I wonder, did they ever carry them out? Both Hayes and Komisarjevsky were convicted of the murders and sentenced to death. Their sentences were vacated August 2015 when the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled the death penalty was unconstitutional. It's ridiculous. Yeah, and they have life imprisonment. Just ridiculous. You know, there are certain people that shouldn't be amongst us, okay? Unconstitutional. Yeah, no wonder they say that this is how did she describe this case? It's a word they don't even say. Yeah, it's just I can't. So they view home invasions quite differently because of this case. There are monsters that live among us, and the idea that you could have people picketing outside trying to keep those monsters alive is just disgusting. But there you have it. Maybe that's why they're a little bit tougher on him. I don't know. It's tough. I get that he had a terrible interview, but at the same time, if the man is actually blind, is he really dangerous? I mean, is he really a threat to society? Has he not served his time, even though he had a bad interview? That is something that's interesting to me, because you're keeping him locked up. Do you really care what's another 3 years? Programs are going to do what? I think that it's worth bringing up. I do wonder, what do you think? Do you think they should have just paroled him regardless of one of the worst interviews we've seen in a long time, or because he's blind, or does it not make a difference to you? Anyways, with that, I'll let you go.